Fear is everywhere. Everywhere you turn to, there is fear. If you're going on social media, there is something to be afraid of. If you're talking with friends, there's something to be worried about. If you're looking at people's social media handles, statuses, there is one thing or the other to be afraid of. But how do we address this particular situation in a situation where everywhere we turn to, there is fear? I'm going to be sharing some useful tips that I have found helpful in the face of constant fear. The mind is a wellspring of life, and if we don't begin to take active, intentional actions as regards guarding our hearts and guiding our minds against this fear, in the long run, we will see that we will begin to act out every of those fearful information that we have gotten into our spirits, whether by our ears or by our eyes. Need I remind you that the eyes, the ear are the gateway to our heart, to our mind. So I'm going to be sharing helpful tips that can help us to guard ourselves, to serve as a shield for us in the face of constant fear. Please stay with me as we get right into the video. So first of all, let's define the battle. The battle is fear. We are constantly facing fear. We are constantly in battle with fear. And I would like us to know that fear is an enemy of faith. It's very easy for us to be in a place of faith where every time we're in church, listening to God's word, getting the message in, it's easy for us to be in faith. Our faith can be easily stirred up when we're in the gathering of believers. But are we constantly in the gathering of believers every day? Are we constantly going to church? Are we constantly in the setting where our faith is built up? Where it looks like, okay, anything can come up, my faith is secured. Yeah, sorry, pardon me, I have some kind of cold, so my voice is a little froggy. All right, so we are not constantly in the church environment, so it most likely looks like every time we're in church, our faith is built up. But the moment we come out of church and we begin to face the outside world, everything starts coming at us again. When we talk to people, when we see things on social media, when we are in a place of work, things just begin to counter every faith that we must have built up on Sunday. So what can we do as individuals to constantly remain in place of faith, such that even when those fearful things, those fearful information, those things come at us, we already have a shield, we already have a guide. Let's make reference to 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. It says, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear," which means that God has given these things to us already. Yes, He says, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind, which means we already have sound mind. But everything that is coming at us is already making it look like, okay, we don't have all these things. God has not given us, it's like a past tense, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love and of sound mind. But of love and of sound mind. What are we supposed to do to keep us in the place of faith when everything around us, when our faith seems to be facing doubts, when our faith seems to be facing doubt in the face of physical evidences that are coming at us, that is even very, very difficult for us to not believe that those things exist? What are we supposed to do in the place of when our faith seems to be paralyzed by our fears? What are we supposed to do when our faith seems to be paralyzed and it looks like, okay, or we have to be in church, or we have to plug ourselves in the church for us to have our faith built up? The first thing I'm going to be saying is, fear is not from God, but it's from the devil. The devil has a way of bringing evidences, physical evidences that are. Before I continue, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. It is the evidence of things not seen. Faith is what we can hold in our hands. Is what's our evidence, what we can see as with respect to what we are hoping for. But fear sometimes can look like something that we are experiencing, like first hand. We're experiencing it first hand. It's not something that we are seeing. We are experiencing it first hand. But what can we do to help us to stay constant in the place of faith when fear seems to be in our faces 24/7, all through the day, all around the year? But one thing is the fact that whenever we're in church, our faith seems to be built up. We feel so much courage, we feel so much confidence that okay, God is able to do these things, God is able to solve every of our needs, meet at the point of our needs, or God is able to bring that thing that we are expecting to pass when we are in church. But the moment we come out of church, like it just feels like there is a pause to our faith. One thing we must first of all know to do is to allow God's word to be constant in our hearts. And what are we supposed to do to ensure that God's word is constant in our heart? We need to set systems and structures in place. What system and structure are we putting in place to help us to remain constant in the presence of God, to help us to make it look like we are in church? At the beginning of the year, so many of us were in different conferences, different conventions and all. Have we allowed those conferences to stay back in January? Or are we constantly meditating on those words, putting them on repeat, on replay? For instance, using myself as a case study, I was at a convention sometime in January, but every of those messages that was passed across in January, I downloaded them. You that you have downloaded those videos, are you constantly listening to them, or they're just in your archive? We can set systems and structures in place such that, okay, these messages that I have listened to and pumped up my faith in January, what can I do to such that I can constantly hear them? We must constantly put ourselves in places that helps us to build up our faith, helps us to soar on our faith, which means that those messages that we have listened to or we have heard from the beginning of the year, are we still listening to them? Are we still applying what we have learned on them? Are we still making reference to the journals that we made use of? Are we still making reference to those things that we wrote down? Or we just allowed those things we wrote down to be in our book? No, we cannot just write those things down and expect them to jump into our hearts and expect them that, okay, since I've listened to them in January, to just carry me through the rest of the year. Are you constantly listening to those messages? Are you plugging your ears to listen to those messages? The eyes are a wellspring of our life. It's a gateway to our spirit, to our soul. So the first thing is to put yourselves in situations or positions whereby you have systems and structures in place that you are able to constantly listen to those messages. It goes a long way. It goes a long way in our lives compared to us listening to them one-off and expecting that it should just carry us through the rest of the year. The second thing is plug yourself in around people that will constantly build your faith. For instance, for me, taking myself as an example, there was a particular community that I joined sometime in January that lasted for about 2 weeks. It really built up my spirit. It really helped my spiritual walk with God. But the beautiful thing about it is every one of us in that community, or some of us in that community, still stayed back in that community where we charge ourselves up in terms of maintaining a Bible study attitude, having gist time. We call it gist time, gist about what we learned about what the Bible passages we have read. So this is us this is me putting myself in a community whereby my faith is constantly built up. So even if at all there is anything in my day that is set to bring down my faith, I am in a community that I am plugged in a community that is helping my faith to be constantly built up. So plug yourself in with systems and structures that will help your faith to be on fire, that will not allow your faith to dwindle. The other thing I'll be mentioning is let your mouth be an instrument backing up your faith. It's not enough to also hear those things that has been preached, or it's another thing we should do is constantly speak it, constantly declare it, like constantly talking about it, making it, because our mind do not even know what is right or wrong. It is what we tell it that it actually believes. So we must constantly say it. Whatever words come out from our mouth, our inner ears hear it. Constantly speak about it, constantly declare it. Our confessions should be in alignment to the words that we have heard. Our confessions, the words from my mouth, should be in alignment, should be a second a backup, should be a backup to the words that we have heard. Then we can now back it up with what we are seeing. What are you seeing? Is what you are seeing in alignment to what you are saying and what you are hearing? So we must allow those three things to be in sync. We must plug ourselves in environments, in communities where our faith is constantly built up. If we begin to find ourselves in environments where that is bringing in worry, allowing worry to set in, bringing negative evidences to our faces, what do we need to do? We must detach ourselves from it fast. Like, don't think about it. You don't need to think about it, dwell on it. Take yourself out of that. If there's any community or in any group or in any environment where that is constantly bringing your faith down, constantly watering down your faith, constantly make you be in a place of worry, constantly countering the confessions you are making or declaring over yourself, plug yourself out of it. It will go a whole long way. Like, God is not going to come down to imprint faith on us. God is not going to come down to do that. We also have to take action as regards what we want to see in our lives. So we must constantly declare. We must declare. We must feed our eyes. We must also hear it. And we must believe it. And we must, when we are praying, we must pray with expectation. We can't be praying for A and be believing for Z. When we are believing for A, when we are praying for A, we must believe it. We must accept it. There are so many times that out of just making a joke, maybe like we can say something negative. No, there is no room for joke in our conversations. There is no room for negative statements in just casual situations. The universe here, the world is designed to pick what we are saying or what our heart is meditating on. So in the face of constant fear, where the world is surrounded by fear, we must be in a place whereby, regardless of whatever fear that comes our way, there is a backup already there is countering whatever fear that may be coming at us. So to be honest, faith is not about ignoring reality, because the reality can be so real. Yes, reality can be so real that it's difficult for you to detach yourself from it. But this is not for me to say that we should ignore reality, but what I'm just saying is we should believe that God is bigger than our reality. I would love to hear from you. How are you applying faith? How are you staying consistent? What are the systems and structures that you are putting in place to ensure that you're staying in an atmosphere of faith as we proceed into the year 2025? We are still in February and we still have a whole long way to go. What are the systems and structures that you're putting in place, and how are you staying true yourself? You know, it is one thing for you to put systems and structures. For instance, setting alarms as a system and structure for some of the things I used to do, but there are sometimes that when those alarm rings, I'll just snooze. So are you staying true to your systems and structure? That's another thing. So it's one thing to set systems and structures, and it's another thing to stay true to those systems and structures. What active measure are you taking to stay true to whatever system and structure you have put in place? Please, let's remember to stay connected, plug our ears to God's word, let our eyes see what we are. I wrote something in my book sometimes. It says, your eyes is always seeing what your brain is looking for. And your brain and your mind are connected. Your eyes will always see what your brain is looking for. Your ears will always hear what your brain what your brain wants to hear. So what are your expectations? What are you expecting in your life? Thank you so much for staying through to the end. I really appreciate you. If this is your first time, please kindly click on the subscribe button below. And if this is your second time and you have not subscribed, please also subscribe. Kindly like, share, comment, and also share this video to as many of your friends that are yet to listen to this. Thank you so much. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.